All right, just getting the early episode adjustments going as they in the continuing ed courses. They always give us a minute to just arrive to the class and let yourself be here. It takes a minute to get things going on the computer. We understand. Get yourself situated. Take a minute.
Speaking of, can you double check your mic real quick?
Ooh, is it the bad mic?
I think it might be.
Is it
I
a bad
didn't.
mic?
I didn't notice it at
Oh.
first.
Yo, that's crazy. It's trying to come in through my webcam. Hold up, hold up, hold up. Mike.
Much better. There we go.
There we go. All right.
I was like,
So, yeah.
something felt kind of off, but I was having trouble placing it at first. And then I was like,
cool.
I'm talking to Justin, not the Tin Man. So here we are.
All right, a little bit of a sound check, all finished. Hello, and welcome to the Tired Boys podcast. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for our final grand recap of the season after our final race of the Formula One season with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. We still may have a final episode kind of to recap the whole season, but today we're just recapping the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix weekend. A lot to talk about. There was F1 Academy, Formula 2 as well, so a lot in the mix. But Justin, it's good to see you. I'm excited to get into this last recap of the year.
Yeah, good to see you too, sir. At the end of the, like you had said, last race of the year, triple header. So it's been kind of an action-packed couple of weeks. Ends, I would argue, on a high note. I think the finale at Abu Dhabi was maybe not an exciting one, but a good one at least. So yeah, excited to get into it. I know we have a few quick hitters here at the top of the show, so let's get right into those.
Yeah, so we'll roll through those pretty quick. But first off, our boy Logan Sargent is announced to be driving in the European Le Mans Series. So going to be doing some endurance racing in the LMP2 category with Jamie Chadwick as one of his counterparts in the team. They'll be driving. And so Jamie Chadwick from Indy NXT Series. So they'll be driving together with a kind of collaboration between Genesis Magma Racing and IDEC Sport. So 2025 endurance racing, Logan Sargent. Excited to see him driving somewhere. There's still obviously opportunities for him to get some other drives as well. That's a lot more infrequent of a format. With it being endurance racing, but good to see him in a spot.
Is Sargent enough to draw your eye over towards endurance racing at all?
I mean, I've peeked at some of the endurance racing periodically. I watched the Le Mans race or a bit of that this past year, so I mean, I'm definitely not opposed to checking it out, or at least keeping an eye on standings, seeing how he does and everything, just out of pure curiosity for our American brother over there. So, looking forward to seeing how he does, but it's also just kind of that. I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but to be able to compare him to some other drivers outside of Formula One and the Formula Series, kind of see, hey, maybe similarly to other Formula One drivers, he could go and have success in another series. We've seen Nick DeVries be successful in multiple other series and then struggle pretty heavily in Formula One. So there's opportunities out there for all of these folks. Well, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah, seems like it. I think it may draw my eye towards endurance championship and excuse me, towards endurance racing in general. I should say. I think it's a format that I haven't tuned too much into, but maybe checking out Sargent's highlights if he's doing well could turn the tide. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's a good opportunity for him to be back in the car. But to get to some other quick hitters, the Dutch Grand Prix is going to be leaving the Formula One calendar after 2026. So that'll be a significant change. It's been on for quite a bit and is one of the pretty big European races with being Max's kind of home race. I am gonna just check on center real quick. Colleen's
Okay.
not home, so I'll be right
No
back.
worries. Yeah, that's crazy. This dog just gets you know, kind of lonely, I guess, if there's if there's nobody around. Aaron's got to shut the door to to record. So hopefully Sen is okay. Yeah, for a minute there, didn't even realize. I was like, cuz I to be fair, normally, you're just to be fair, we're just like recording, but in the moment I realized like, oh shit, well I guess we are live on Twitch, so yeah, we'll just keep it going here.
All right, so we have a third host for today's episode, Senna, right there in the background. So she's gonna be hanging out while we pod until Colleen gets home. But yes, so Dutch Grand Prix off the calendar. We're starting to see that lineup kind of shape up for the schedule next season or in the coming seasons, but coming off in 2026.
And that is Max's home race, but not technically Red Bull's home race. That's the Hungaro ring, correct? And those are like two different.
Right, yes. So Hungaro ring and then the Red Bull ring would be Red Bull's home.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. Well, not cool if you enjoy the Dutch Grand Prix, but I guess like sitting here thinking about it, the layout like isn't striking my mind. So maybe just they're
Yeah,
you
I
know
mean, it sounds like they're going to try and rotate some of the European races. So even if it's not, I guess, the most exciting, it'll be curious to see how things shake out because we've had like multiple races in individual countries throughout. Like we have a number of races in the U.S. We've had two in Italy. Over the past, we've had some multiple races in Spain as well, I believe, with Barcelona and blanking where else, but I know Madrid's being potentially added to the calendar. So it'll be interesting kind of seeing how that all shakes out between the schedule and calendar over the coming years. But one notable change after being on for a few years now.
That's a good point. Okay, gotcha.
Then to the next quick hitter. So Williams Racing has announced a multi-year partnership with Santander as a sponsor. Santander had been a sponsor for Ferrari for something like 16, 18 years going now. But with the Carlos Sainz switch, I believe they're a Spanish brand or Spanish banking company. So going from Ferrari over following Carlos Sainz, their Spanish driver, to Williams there.
That's really interesting. You would imagine that gets really muddy, but the other side of that coin is, well, no, this is like kind of part of what they do. Part of that whole like contract conversation would be about like what you're bringing in terms of like sponsor numbers, and like all baked into those contracts would be like the dates that like, oh, our financial bit ends like on this day where our funds are rescinded, because it's not like they are. And this is actually like an interesting thing to key into, where I don't know if I'm always aware of it, is okay, some of these sponsorships that are on the vehicles that you see or in the paddock or like in the garage, they are the sponsor of that driver. And you're saying, so like they're like, yeah, Sainz used to be on Ferrari, so technically they were like a sponsor of him in Ferrari, but like they're now gonna like move with him to Williams. That's actually very interesting and not exactly obvious.
Yeah,
So I'm happy you bring that up.
and I think it, like you said, it's kind of those contract end dates and things like that. I know a lot of these, like this was announced as a multi-year partnership, so a lot of these things don't necessarily change over depending on the landscape of Formula One, but in some instances, so like I said, Ferrari, Santander has been a sponsor of them for something like 16 years in a row now, or for the last 16, 18 years, something like that. And so they obviously haven't been a primary sponsor of Carlos Sainz through his career or anything. But having that partnership with Ferrari, kind of building that connection to Sainz, Spanish driver, they're a Spanish banking company. So it makes sense, like, oh, our contract's coming up. Let's go over and follow this driver who we know or anticipate is going to be still a solid quality driver in Formula One for a number of years to come. Let's set ourselves up and have that closer tie, gives them better marketability for people in Spain. Like, hey, like this is our, instead of maybe a footballer or something like that, this is our Formula One spokesperson for Santander, and kind of like just strengthens that that tie a little bit, having that national connection.
Yeah, do you think like a sponsorship addition like this boosts the percentage of the it's not market cap, the cost cap, the budget cap? Do you think a sponsorship like that helps them like fill more of the percentage of the budget cap? Do you think it helps them in the long term?
I think so. I mean, Williams has obviously gone through their struggles. They've had different sponsorships come and go over the past years. They've sold the team. They've like gone through a lot, and so getting a company like Santander, who has been like a rear wing sponsor for Ferrari, they've been on all different parts of that car. They're probably going to bring a significant amount of money that for a team like Williams that doesn't necessarily reach that salary cap with their standard budget, that budget cap, that they might be closer, like you said, to filling that up, give them some more car repair money there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, okay, you just said something there that like lit me up. So, you said rear wing sponsor. Does rear wing sponsor refer to just a name that's on the rear wing? Is that like indicative of like the size of sponsorship? Or are you saying that you know directly like companies will, hey, like we're going to sponsor the like drive shaft engineering? Like, is that how it works?
So more so the location on the car of the sponsorship, but being on the rear wing, it's obvious, like it's a very prominent location on the car. You're seeing it at so many points. So the sponsorship, like for that placement of your brand or company name or anything, you're going to be shelling out a little bit more money than if you're just like a little sticker on the side that maybe is only being seen during a pit stop or during the pre-race grid walk or something like that. Being like Red Bull Racing and their partnership with Oracle, where it's Oracle Red Bull Racing, the big Oracle across the rear wing that you're seeing, and as you're looking back in the rear views with the right before that Red Bull DRS flap opens, you're just seeing and reading that Oracle across the rear wing. So that just to be said that Santander's probably bringing a significant sponsorship. It's not just little piddly money that they're bringing along with them to that partnership with Williams.
That makes sense. Yeah, the way you phrase it though could easily have been like there was something to like engineering allocations where they can be like,
Yeah.
hey, we want our money to go towards blah 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 blah. But okay, that's fascinating. So it's in reference to kind of like how big of a sponsor, therefore
Right.
like how much visibility they get like on the vehicle. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a great term. Okay, so yeah, we're seeing, you said a Spanish banking company, Santander, moving over with science as like a key reason why to kind of bring that national partnership kind of together.
Yeah, and of
Very
course,
cool.
Ferrari losing that sponsorship is probably not going to be super damaging to them since they're only just bringing Lewis Hamilton, seven-time drivers champion, to their lineup. I'm sure he could bring a couple of sponsors over. Tommy Hilfiger might be interested.
That's a big one that I thought of.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely going to be someone to fill that void over with the Ferrari squad, but yeah, pretty significant thing for Williams, I would say, and hopefully will bring them into even further contention, along with having a really, in my opinion, really solid driver lineup with Sainz and Albon now. So it'll be exciting to see, and just one of those big changes. Then to move right along to the last couple quick hitters, I've just got some tea for you, Justin. We had the F1 drivers dinner that they do before the Abu Dhabi weekend every year. I don't know if you heard, but the George was the last person to show up. They left an empty seat next to Max for him, and he decided to take that chair and awkwardly walk it to the far side of the table to sit next to Lewis. He wanted nothing to do with that. And of course, throughout the weekend, there were some conversations. George had alluded to, or said basically in an interview, that when Max had come into the steward's room, that Max was cursing at the stewards, all these things and everything, just going off. And Crofty, during the broadcast, I think during one of the practice sessions, said that that report, their indication based on that report, was that there was no swearing going on in this steward's room coming from Max Verstappen. So George trying to really light a little fire in this feud here, potentially telling some stories there that to try and garner some support to his side, but Crofty seemed to shut that down decently on the broadcast.
Yeah, unfortunately, you have these well-respected voices just kind of dropping knowledge like that. It's really, really going to shut it down. Unfortunately, he's not really able to kind of leave it on the track. Unfortunately, stuff like that just doesn't really come across that well, and it is the type of shit that people remember, like, weirdly and unfortunately. So yeah, I'd likely prefer him to make statements on track. Like,
Yep.
Yeah, just like, man, that's tough. That's tough to hear. I hope that George can maybe, I don't want to say like mature a little bit, because he's yeah.
Well, just
what's like the word for it? Like why you gotta be doing that?
maybe like I know exactly, like, to rise above it a little bit, to take a cliche saying there, but to be the bigger man, and just like let it go. Everyone had their conversation. Max is like, I told them what they did, like what happened, and George was like vying against me, like, not cool, bro. And George is like, he was cursing them out. It's a whole, like, yeah, just kind of like let it die down. Just say, hey, if you feel that way, George, or George says, hey, if you feel that way, Max, like, I'm just gonna be the bigger man, and just kind of move forward. But yeah, none of that to be had.
Unfortunate.
But the final little piece of news that was that Max, he's gonna potentially have some more just something to race for, or maybe something to get some more penalty points for. But that he and his partner Kelly Piquet announced that they're going to be having a baby next year. So Max is going to be a father. Max will be not just Formula One's daddy. He will be a father for his child coming 2025. But just exciting news. It's kind of cool. Like, I was watching and seeing stuff from Haas putting out with Kevin Magnussen's daughter. Like, they're in the garage, like, with their little headphones on, helping him put on his gloves and everything. I think it's adorable. It was like cute seeing all that. And so it'll be a neat thing. Not too many of these drivers are, one, old enough that they're quite at that point in life, and then two, the life of a Formula One driver doesn't always lend itself that much to maybe the being a parent. But Max said with having 8 penalty points now here at the end of the season, that maybe he can line up penalty points to get a little paternity leave around when the baby's born. So a nice little joke from him. I find that pretty good humor.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of reality in every joke, and what that means is that, like, the amount of off time is such that one might feel like they have to, like, wouldn't that be ridiculous if, like, that's actually what he had to do to get vacation time? Because, like, you have to field 2 cars and this and that. It's like, when do you get to, it's like, you know what? I'm going to just Magnussen a couple times in a row and see what happens.
I mean, I think that there's probably better ways to do it, of maybe, like, just bowing out for a race or two. I feel like, depending on how the season's going, of course, people do it in all different sports, and a 24 race season is a long one. He could maybe take off a race and let the reserve driver fill in. But I mean, you see it in football, baseball, basketball, where players will sit out games for when they're having children and things like that, to be able to spend time with the wife, with the family, and all during that big event. So
oh yeah, I'm sure there's like what'd you say, paternity leave, like, rules,
yeah.
and
so trucking other cars and just bowling through them like pins probably isn't necessary to take a race off. He could probably just do that if he wanted to, but yeah, an exciting thing for him. So congrats to my boy Max, gonna be a dad. That's just cool.
Yeah, good to know he's got live ones, man. Congratulations, that's exciting.
Yeah, but to move along to the Do You Work Here segment, we of course talked about Esteban Ocon not being with the Alpine team anymore. He's out the door. He made a really nice post, though, basically saying that even though it was not the perfect year, he was still appreciated all of his time with Alpine and everything. He appreciated all the team, the engineers. He even had a custom helmet made with him, and just pictures of him on the podium, kind of commiserating those successes he had with the Alpine team. And so, unfortunately, not getting to share that with the team for the last race weekend, but he did wish Jack Doohan good luck with taking over for that race. Joe similarly had a farewell helmet that had farewell Valtteri on it, and a bunch of pictures of them and just different things from his time with the Sauber family. So pretty nice, touching just things for those drivers who are exiting the sport at the end of this year. one that was a little less touchy feel or like emotions was Valtteri in an interview had basically he said that if he could go back 3 years, he would have gone somewhere else than Sauber. So
Yeah.
pretty. I mean, it's not a like not a surprise to say that, I guess, but at the same time, to actually like, I think any of us could look at it and go, if I were Valtteri, I would have probably gone somewhere else than that. But then to actually come out and say it, like, we all know that it probably would have been better for him to be somewhere else. But that's definitely a bit of a dig as you're heading out the door to be like, man, I had no idea that this team would be as bad as they were for my time here. So yeah, kind of disappointing way for Valtteri's career to most likely come to a close. I think he may be a reserve driver, but at this point, I have trouble imagining him coming back onto the grid.
Yeah, I think that would be a far-off future, but yeah, just a couple of notes. Valtteri Bottas, expected reserve role, likely at Mercedes. There have been conversations alluding to that. Zhou, expected reserve role at possibly Ferrari, but just like him being in a reserve role seems to be rather expected. Another name, Kevin Magnussen, is moving to a hypercar program with BMW. That's in the works, so he'll be moving on to, green pastures, at least, maybe not greener, who knows. And then Franco Colapinto saying thank you to the Williams team in the messages before the race, saying they helped him realize his dream. Very touching words from Franco Colapinto. Likely a reserve role at Williams, at least that's what he'd be like looking at in the next year or so. Just so a couple of notes there for Do You Work Here segment, a couple of farewells, drivers moving on, a couple of new names on the grid, just like a little bit of an update going into 2025. We've got Andrea Kimi Antonelli coming into the Mercedes seat. We have Oliver Behrman coming in. Who else is coming on that's like fresh and new?
Jack Doohan with Alpine.
Jack Doohan. Yep,
So
okay.
those would be, I guess, the big three coming into next year.
Gotcha. That was
Young
just the name
drivers
that I was
coming
leaving
on.
off.
Yeah. Oh, and
then Bortoletto.
Yep, Bortoletto.
Got it.
So there you go. Final one being added to the grid for next year. So yeah, definitely some exciting times with these young drivers coming in. It is. I feel like I have some extra just like tie to some of these drivers as they're going out the door. Someone like Valtteri, who has been around for the entirety of my Formula One viewership, and everything. Like it's Magnussen similarly has been around minus that 1 year with the bouncing out for Mazepin and Schumacher. But it's nice to see these guys still being like in racing, like you said, with Kevin Magnussen going over to BMW for the hypercar, and then Valtteri in that most likely reserve role. It'll be nice to still occasionally see their faces around the grid.
Yeah, for sure. And they must have something to offer, like motor racing just in general. So yeah, I imagine while it might be the end of their Formula One careers, I'm sure there are just bright things in general on the horizon for them. So yeah, just looking forward to just seeing what they do in general, and just excited for just their futures, and just hope that their goals kind of get realized in some way, because yeah, none of them have shown like ill will to the community or reason to say like, oh, like we're not really sure about this individual or what have you. So yeah, just like best wishes on whatever their next projects are. That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how, and like similarly, keeping an eye on how Magnuson does in that other series, like we
Sure.
talked about with Logan Sargent. Um, but yeah, I think that should wrap up the do your work here and kind of pre-weekend segments. But before the end of this year and the end of our episodes, like we said, we'll probably have one more coming up with a season recap. So don't miss that because there won't be a race weekend. So you know how you avoid missing that episode coming out? You hit the like button, subscribe button, put the alerts on for when we drop new episodes, whether it's here, whether it's leading into the beginning of the upcoming season, preseason testing. Who knows when you'll see us next? So make sure that you're following, liking, subscribing to know when that's coming up.
Thank you so much for your support. We've loved doing this all year. The Tired Boys podcast will live on. So thank you so much for your support. Back to the show.
Yeah. So diving into just quick through F1 Academy, I honestly didn't get much opportunity to watch a lot from it. I don't know if you caught the races as much, but with
Give you the highlights.
So with Abi Pulling, after being announced as champion after the last racing weekend, they announced that there would be that third race in Abu Dhabi, which technically made it so that she could have been surpassed in points by the end of the season. That was not to be so. She crushed it in qualifying, being at the top of the table for all three qualifying sessions. We saw Chloe Chambers have some really solid success here as well, being in P2 for all three of those qualifying results as well. But then coming into the race, Abi Pulling wins the first two races of the F1 Academy weekend, and then finishes a very respectable P2 to really just put a unbelievable kind of final weekend out there after having an extremely successful season, adding 3 more podiums to her tally. She really just across the year had a phenomenal season. I think only missed out on the podium like 3 or 4 times across the year. So just a unreal season for her. And similarly, looking forward to what is next, whether that's F1 Academy or other racing series for her.
Yeah, agreed. A couple of highlights from the weekend here. Race 1, Chambers has a really good opportunity on pulling like off the line. Unforced error though, she like goes off track, and then when she rejoins, she gets banged with a 5-second penalty for like an unsafe rejoin. So what starts off like pretty solid for her, just it's like a 1-2 knockout. The really exciting part of that race, like after Pulling just like gets a lead, P1 is accounted for, but I think the most exciting part of the race was Maya Vogue was like pushing the whole time. She was looking for overtakes on many of the corners. She was even looking for them on turns where, you know, you would hear the casters saying like not usually an overtaking opportunity. She was either looking for the opportunity or able to get it done. There was like 1 or 2 key overtakes that she was able to make to put herself up in. I think she ends up finishing like P5 or P6, but in the hunt like the whole time. So I think she was like the most exciting driver on the grid for race 1. Race 2, Chambers is able to capitalize on an unforced error from Abi Pulling, which is like pretty rare. So we see a bit of a lead change there going on towards the final stages of the race. Abi Pulling is able to find an opportunity for an overtake, take that P1 position back. A note from like a little further back, we saw the McLaren supported driver Bustamante, she had like a bunch of really good opportunities for overtakes to get done. Like she had the pace, she was sticking with a bunch of the other drivers, but when it came to like mid corner, like looking for the move, kind of like in the braking zone, these scenarios didn't have the pace to ultimately get the overtake done. So while she was in the hunt, not able to really get the overtakes done, unfortunately. So just like a little bit of a key piece from race number 2. And then race number 3 was wild. I think probably the worst racing that we've seen from Abi Pulling all weekend. A few lockups going into turns. Like one was pretty bad, and then we also see her receiving the black and white flags for track limit. So, and I don't think it was like bad racing. It looked like under braking, the car was like a little unstable. So I'm not sure what would be causing this, but like you could see they were a little tentative before attacking the apex. So just interesting little note there. And then Maya Vogue gets her first win in Formula One Academy. In that race 3, gets the win. Really exciting moment from that race is like lap 6 to 7. There's a moment where there's like 4 or 5 cars wide going into a turn, and they're like all in a position to take the P1, and it's like they're all like jockeying for position. It's like kind of a crazy moment. So yeah, really exciting race, and like at least the top 5 to 7 drivers all had pace, all were in the hunt, all were in a position to like take the top step of the podium. So I thought that was really exciting. But yeah, big props to Maya Vogue getting her first dub in F1 Academy, and like it looked really good.
Yeah, and I think that's the exciting part of, like we've talked about with F2 and F3 similarly, that watching these smaller cars that are on even ground racing around these circuits that are built for the larger Formula One cars and everything can give us some really exciting opportunities, and can give those exciting moments with so many cars vying for it on similar playing field, similar tire strengths and everything, but just being able to give some really solid racing. And the F1 Academy season across the year gave us quite a bit of solid racing. So it's definitely been a fun watch. Congrats to Abi Pulling on the championship, and for Maya Vogue with her first win of the season. But yeah, I've enjoyed the F1 Academy series. I know we've talked about it a number of times, but I'm looking forward to just seeing where it continues and the growth of that, and hopefully maybe down the line in a few years we'll start seeing some of these drivers make their way up through and potentially be in Formula One or other Formula Series. It would be pretty cool to see. So building that groundwork.
Yeah, and just even in Formula One Academy, I think there is a genuine, I don't want to say like rivalry, but give it another year or two with Dorian Pan and Abi Pulling constantly vying for those like top 2 spots, in the hunt for maybe P3 sometimes. That competition between those two, throw in like Chambers in there, throw in one of the Alcabezi sisters in the Red Bull sponsored car. There are a few drivers that I think have potential to create like true battles that'll like really like make a championship. So with that in mind, yeah, there's a couple of drivers that are actually genuinely like quite exciting, and within the world of Formula One Academy, there's some like storylines that like I'm genuinely interested in, especially the jockeying for best female driver in the world. Is it going to be Abi Pulling? Is it going to be Dorian Pan? I genuinely find that to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, so a lot to look forward to with the F1 Academy, these different driver just battles throughout the year, and hopefully in the future as well. I don't remember if the winner of F1 Academy has to leave, similar to like Formula 2. I'd have to double check because that could potentially squash some of this excitement, unfortunately. But
right.
would leave open some opportunities for other drivers coming in as well. But moving over into the Formula 2 section of the weekend, we had the sprint race and the feature race here with an extremely tight championship battle coming into the weekend between Bortoleto and Isaac Hadjar. Half a point difference between the two of them. And then after the sprint race, that difference only being extended by half a point, Bortoleto getting a half point in the sprint race to go up 1 full point leading into the feature race. No, I'm lying. I was looking at the wrong thing. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say Bortoleto won the sprint.
Yes, I was when I was looking back, Monza was the thing that popped up where Bortoleto got the half point there. So yeah.
Nice.
Sorry.
Did you react because of my face or because it sounded wrong?
It sounded wrong, but
Okay.
also your face definitely helped with me
Okay.
piecing that together. So yeah, Bortoleto taking the win in the sprint race to extend that lead a little bit, but still well within reach leading into the feature race for the F2 weekend. And unfortunately, just the most anticlimactic way that championship could have ended, or I guess the climactic point of the championship just happened at the very start of the race with Isaac Hadjar stalling off the line there.
GG's. Dude, that radio message, like, he doesn't even sound, like, angry. It's like, it's almost like the calmest radio message where he's just like, this is the worst moment of my life.
Yeah.
He's like, all of that hard work. He's like, what was all of that for? Like, for it to just to end like this. Bro, the craziest part is Alex Jakes on the radio casting, who's his teammate?
Hadjar's teammate is... It's not Crawford, is it?
That doesn't sound right. Whoever it is, he's casting his like teammate who's like now in like P3 as though it was Hadjar, and he's like, oh, like he's hunting for the lead, like Bortoleto's getting away, like Bortoleto's checked out, and then like you just like wait, oh no, Hadjar's on the line, he never left the line, no, like he's literally figuring it out in the moment. Bro, that is just the most heartbreaking thing. Because and this must be the experience for a lot of fans of Formula 2, is in these last 2 to 3 races, it really closed up. Like, there were opportunities for all the drivers. And for it just to end on a stall, like, that's really unfortunate. I don't know which would be harder to stomach, ending on a stall where like it's effectively out of your hands, or being decided by the stewards when it's effectively out of your hands. Like, which one's worse, 2021 or this?
I mean, I think it's probably it's got to be equally frustrating. Like, sure. I don't know if it probably depends on person to person, but either way, like, I think a DNF probably would, in my opinion, sting a little bit more, because I would feel like, especially in this kind of situation, that was fully out of my hands, whereas if you got to at least drive the full race and it comes down to something officiating, like, yeah, that's definitely gonna sting too, but you at least like were given the opportunity to put a drive out there and go for it, and you just got unlucky there. This, like, you just, there's so much unknown, and that would eat away at me a little bit. But I think the really difficult part especially with Hadjar. He isn't going to be continuing on in Formula 2. He's finishing second in the Drivers' Championship. He's either going to be going up to Red Bull or into the Red Bull family as a potential driver with V-Carb if Checo ends up leaving and however that shakes out. But also could end up just being a reserve driver for one of the Red Bull squads or racing in Super Formula like Liam Lawson did or some other series with the Red Bull organization. But to kind of know like that you're heading out the door of Formula 2 as well and you never are going to get that opportunity again to try and win that championship after being so close, like that would kill me. So I really, especially hearing that radio message, it's heartbreaking.
Oh, dude, yeah, that's like the worst thing to hear. That's, man, my heart truly goes out to Isaac Hadjar. That's a really tough way to have, like he said, all of that hard work just undone in a moment, and just this other guy just gets fucking handed the dub. Man, yeah, I would understand anything that guy threw out. So yeah, true commiserations to Isaac Hadjar. No competitor wants to go out like that. But to be fair, I think there would be drivers who would be freaking out on the radio, cursing, flipping out, kicking a tire. I gotta admit, like, to be handed a big L like that, he was quite respectful, and I didn't see any like unsportsmanlike conduct from him after the fact. So respect.
Yeah, just a huge bummer for him, but big congratulations on the other side of the coin to
Sure.
Bortoleto for winning the championship. Of course, a very long, hard-fought season for him as well, and so to come out on top, even with it sort of being gifted to him to some extent, I mean, that's still a extremely huge accomplishment for him and something that he can carry on into his Formula One season this coming year with Kick Sauber, just build on that for his career. So hopefully we see some good things from the young driver coming up into Formula One.
Yeah, very very exciting win for the no, Isaac Hadjar is French. Bortoleto is Brazilian, thank you. There you go. But yeah, exciting stuff coming up in 2025 for some of these new driver lineups. But yeah, that's the couple of feeder series races that we had. F2 ends anticlimactically with Gabriel Bortoleto getting the dub, and then Formula One Academy, we had the triple header on the weekend with Abi Pulling it out, which was very exciting stuff. But let us get into the meat of the weekend. We had the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix at the Yas Marina circuit, which is some great racing. Honestly, I really enjoy the left-right action that you get, where the inside of one turn becomes the outside of another, and then the inside becomes the outside. You have to get quite creative, but in doing so, you get many opportunities for overtaking. So this is a track where surprisingly you can actually kind of change your fate in a lot of ways. So a favorite circuit of mine, I have to be honest, and that little, like, I guess you would call it like a stadium section, you know what I'm talking about, where it goes under you have like that section's sick. It's like really slow speed turns, but you can see drivers, like, that's where drivers can make the difference, like in the slow speed. And so yeah, a favorite section of mine on the track. So yeah, I think the Yas Marina circuit makes for some good racing.
The pit lane going underground, like through the tunnel too, and coming out at turn 2 is a pretty unique one. But for the Yas Marina circuit, so we had a couple of things coming into the weekend. One being just a cool thing, but Arthur Leclerc drove in practice session 1 for Ferrari in Carlos Sainz's car. So the first time that two brothers have taken a part in a Formula One session as teammates with Arthur and Charles Leclerc there. So a cool moment, cool opportunity. Of course, we've had other siblings, Ralph and Michael Schumacher, and a number of other sibling drivers over the years. But to be on the same team, that has to be kind of cool. Afterwards, Charles can kind of like talk to his brother and be like, oh, like talk more specifics, I guess, about the car than you would typically be able to than just about racing in general. It's kind of a neat little memory that they'll get to have together.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I imagine, if they both continue to show the class of driving that they have, I imagine many more memories like that they'll have the opportunity to make.
Yeah, and it probably that those feel good moments maybe soften the blow that Leclerc took with the 10th place grid penalty for new components on his car that was announced coming into the weekend. So knowing that you're in the Constructors' Championship fight and you're automatically going to be starting 10 grid places back from best possible option, it's just a tough way to come into that fight to feel like your hands are tied behind your back initially. Of course, he did not stay that far back for long, but definitely a tough way to come in, and then struggling in the qualifying session from Leclerc as well, not having his lap time deleted and dropping to start pretty deep back in the grid is a tough way to go out there.
Yeah, I mean, it almost didn't matter. We were close to seeing, and I mean, depending on what team you like, you'd agree, we saw a Lewis Hamilton-esque drive from Charles Leclerc, starting impossibly far back on the grid and just passing every driver like they're almost not even there. What was he was like? I think it was like lap 4.
Oh yeah. He moved up almost 10 places on the opening lap.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I looked up on lap 4 and he was already like in P9 or P8. I'm pretty sure he started P18.
P19. I just
P19.
checked.
Okay, yeah. That's a Lewis Hamilton-esque drive, like in his prime, going from all the way to the back to the front. Like, that's crazy. The amount of determination in this guy's voice, like during the comms of the race, this guy was on, oh my gosh, he was on a whole nother level. If he did not take each of those lumps like throughout the weekend, Buck, we need new parts. Okay, qualifying goes awful. He would have been P1 probably guaranteed. I don't know if Sainz was able to contest like the pace of the McLaren. You even see he's like a couple like tenths back in qualifying as well. But if Charles was not hampered as much as he was probably winning that race just with the amount of like gusto he had.
I think you would have had a shot at it. I'm sure there would have been some team orders coming into play to send Charles after Lando and hope that he has that pace to catch him. Who knows? Because we did see both the McLaren and the Ferrari semi in clean air, and the McLaren just had really great pace on the weekend as well. But yeah, pretty incredible from Charles, and I think like it speaks to him a lot, like you said, the determination and all that he has. He is, the more and more I watch him, the more I truly feel like he is championship caliber, as like a driver's champion, potentially, or contender. Because you've seen him get race wins and everything, but we've also seen inconsistency, some of the errors and everything that he's made. But his just pure one single lap pace with how well he's qualified over the years and how successful he's been there, along with having just that he has that very like focused, singularly focused mindset when he's in that car. Last year at the end of the season being like, oh, can I back up these drivers to try and get us into a better spot for the championship, or just trying to find any little way to help out the team. The team was super excited to finish second in the constructors again, which is a great feat, but he was so devastated afterwards. Like, you could see pictures of him, and that mindset of just like really just singularly focusing on being as successful as possible. Second place is the first loser. That's that champion mindset that you see in a guy like Lewis or a guy like Max. I mean, in a race that really meant nothing to Max here at the end of the season, we saw him, he saw a gap, or thought he saw a gap, and he went for it on lap one. Like, there's something to drivers that are just like, they will put their head down and just get after it every single time. Leclerc's not whining. He's not, like, all the drivers sound whiny occasionally on the radio, but he is one of the ones that I find rarely has those moments where you're kind of looking at him like, oh, come on, man. Like, he just has that passion for it. So an incredible drive from him through the race, coming from the back of the grid. And so I don't know if he was on your list, but why don't we take that into the winners and losers for this final Grand Prix recap?
Yeah, for sure. Is Charles Leclerc one of your winners? Is that what you're saying?
He is not, so I wasn't sure if he. I was hoping that I could transition it in, but I wasn't. I didn't check to see if he was on your list.
No, unfortunately, he was not on my list. It was a toss-up between Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc for me. I knew one of them was going to get it for the like back-to-front drive that they had to do. The fact that Lewis got to end his with donuts on the grid and a like his own little sign. He got to be like behind the top three with his own little Lewis sign. That beat it out for me. It was between him and Charles. Okay. I think Charles's drive was better, but Lewis got the Lewis got the send off that Daniel Ricciardo never got for like his leave out of Formula One. Everybody coming over, dapping him up, saying like, you know, we're gonna miss you, we love you, all of that kind of thing. So yeah, Lewis
isn't even leaving.
Right, he's not even leaving Formula One. He's just changing teams. But everybody's like, oh, we fucking love you. I mean, hey, deserve on the guy.
Like, 100%.
7-time world champion, go for it. But my second winner on the weekend, Lewis Hamilton. Another like classic, you would say, from back of the grid, hunts down his teammate, last lap overtake. It doesn't even look difficult when he like ends up catching Russell. He just kind of slides right by him. Whether Russell like gives it up or not, who knows? But the overtake looks like pretty easy, and yeah, I think it was a wonderful send off from Mercedes to their driver. They obviously have a lot of love for him, and I think that was a wonderful way to end a race. It was like just a heater of a performance, even though like in the long run it doesn't really matter, like, you know, whatever, it's just kind of for him, but just in the zoomed in view of just a race, he drove an amazing race. So yeah, I think.
And talking about talking about Abu Dhabi as a circuit where you were saying there's these sections of the inside line becoming the outside line and swapping back and forth. That was a cool part, watching the overtake of George at the end of the race too, because they're going through those sections and you're just watching them sweep around these turns like neck and neck until Lewis gets that inside line coming out of the last section and all to jump in front of George. So yeah, really, really great drive. Lewis has been powered by Mercedes for, like he said, I think 26 years, for really as long as he has been racing. It seems that he's had Mercedes power under him, and been coming up through their series, driving for McLaren, powered by Mercedes engines and whatnot as well. So a extremely long tenure for a driver, and pairing between driver and team. And after so much success, I'm just looking forward to see what's to come in some red and black for Lewis Hamilton next year in the Ferrari team. My first winner of the week was actually, though, the true winner of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Sonny Hayes. It has just been such a treat to wrap up the season like that, with Brad Pitt making Carlos and George come back out after they're going through all these end of season emotions to do a little filming segment with Brad Pitt on the top of the podium. I'm sure after the hard drives that they put in to see Brad just hop right up there on top and get that little film session. I'm sure they're disappointed that the filming will be over for this Formula One movie. I'm sure they're gonna miss it.
I'm sure they will too. That's wild.
Yeah,
that's wild. And you're right. I cannot believe that I overlooked Sonny Hayes winning.
Yeah, but to actually, my first winner was McLaren for this week. Winning the Constructors' Championship is especially, and I heard it from the broadcast. I've heard it kind of from all over, but it really, like, seeing where they were 2 years ago and how far they've developed their team and their car over the past couple of years to go from really the last places on the grid to winning a Constructors' Championship in 2 years is, I mean, last year during preseason testing, they could barely get the car on the track because of how many issues that they were having. But to go from there to winning the championship all in 2 years is pretty incredible. And alongside with that, it really speaks to the engineering and how like trustworthy and dependable their vehicle has been too, because Oscar was the only driver across the year to complete every lap of the season. So finished with a perfect record in that. Even almost getting taken out by Max this week, he still pulled the car around for the rest of the race. Finished completing every lap of the season to join only 3 other drivers who have completed every lap of a season. Those drivers being Michael Schumacher in 2002, Lewis Hamilton in 2019, and Max Verstappen in 2023. So Oscar joining a very highly acclaimed list there, with a really, really successful year from him, and for the McLaren team. Lando, of course, getting the win in the race as well. Just a huge weekend for them, and you could hear it in their voices talking about it. You could hear it in Zach Brown's giddiness afterwards as well, and just exciting and big congratulations to McLaren.
Yeah, speaking of giddiness in Zach Brown's voice, I did a quick Google at the end of the end of the race, just just a little, just a check. Cool $140 million went to the winning constructor, I believe, in 2023.
What went to
So
P2? What was the?
I
Do you
think P2
remember?
was like 125 million or like
Okay.
130 mil, something like that. But
So
the full prize purse is like $1 billion, I'm pretty sure. So
just a
yeah, if
cool
I was Zach
Billy.
Brown, just a cool bill. Yeah, if I was Zach Brown, I would be quite happy. I'd
Yeah.
be a happy individual.
Yeah, that I'll let you go, son. There you go. Yeah, I definitely understandably happy for for that with Zach Brown. So a big congratulations to them. For my second winner of the season, though, another kind of crazy season long stat. Pierre Gasly finishes 10th in the drivers' standings with starting really where we were just talking about McLaren being last year, him and Esteban Ocon being in that P19, P20 spot at the start of the season. He finishes P10 in the Drivers' Championship. They get P6 in the Constructors, and he ends up causing no damage across the season, either to his car or other cars. So I know we briefly talked about that, but just in general, a solid drive from him this weekend as well. Getting up there and finishing in P7, but also across the year, he really just persevered through some really tough times with Alpine to finish in that top 10 in the drivers' standings, beating out some of his close competition, Nico Hulkenberg, Yuki Tsunoda, Lance Stroll. So yeah, really, really solid year for Pierre Gasly.
Okay, that's an interesting route to go. I can appreciate that. Definitely has been like consistent. They're there to pick up the odd opportunity when it presented itself. Yeah, and P10 brings the team to a P6. That bottom half of the grid compared to the top four is like a stark contrast as far as like how many points they were able to grab. But yeah, Pierre Gasly definitely setting himself apart from, like you said, the competition directly around him. So that's a really solid shout. Kind of thinking more over like the longitude as opposed to like this direct race. But even this race, like directly, it was a solid one. So yeah, I really like that. I just want to add on to your McLaren note because they were my top winner as well. Not much to add. I think great coverage. The only thing I'll say is it's unfortunate, and he was my loser for the weekend, or yeah, loser for the weekend, Piastri. With the pace that he had all weekend, he should have been up there with Lando, like to like bring it home, seal the deal. They both had the pace. Like if you look across all the sessions, it was Lando and Oscar right there. We have Headhunter, Max Verstappen. He just drove straight into the side of Piastri, just with all lack of abandon. He was like, you know what? Only one of their drivers is finishing well. That's the goal. I knew it. I could see it. So he intentionally takes Piastri out and ruins Piastri's chances of like getting the celebration with his team. I think if it wasn't for Max, Piastri should have been up there, on the podium. So that's what I have to
But
say about that.
but wasn't it so sick how Max just whipped the car around and ends up being facing straight forward on the track after all of that commotion?
Yes, it was
No.
pretty sick. I have to give you that.
No, but I mean, obviously, Oscar. I mean, he's starting up there in P2. He, like you said, had pace all weekend. He even showed after that some solid pace to be able to work his way back up into the points after getting taken out, knocked all the way down to the dregs of the grid. But a really just good drive, recovery drive from him. A bummer, obviously. He was not thrilled to be put in that position by Max. Max did apologize to him afterwards, and he they both talked about it a little bit. So at least that's what we call growth. Max is going and apologizing. He definitely did not intend it, but I mean, coming from the start that Max had, he was flying off the start line, got past signs in no time. But yeah, really a unfortunate way for Oscar's race to start. Even if he made it back into the points by the end.
He did make it back into the points, but I think I think Max did that intentionally, and that's just uncalled for. Piastri's radio message killed me though, where he's like movable world champion. That one, like, damn, like fucking got him.
Oscar doesn't talk a lot, but when he comes out of the cut, he's got some bars there. So he had that one dialed up. He's like, I know exactly who hit me, and
dude, I was dying. So I think Piastri deserves a mention in that regard. And I'll just throw this at you. I think it sucks to have so many DNFs on the end of the season, especially drivers that are like not going to be driving. It's a tough way to go out. Same with Sergio. So just like comment a couple of losers in that regard. I hate to see so many DNFs in a position like this.
Yeah, and that covered both of my losers really this week. I didn't feel like there was anyone that really I wanted to harp on anything too much. Just especially with Valtteri, his last race in Formula One, most likely to unfortunately DNF, not be able to finish the race. And then the other one was Sergio Perez, who saw Max spin and then said, let's do it again right there on the first lap, going and doing a spin of him of his own. It's unfortunate. Once again, I was really like, I didn't say it out loud this time, but I was like, man, it can't be worse than last time with Sergio, and I was hoping for a nice end to the season for him. I'm like, I was like, okay, like that last one in Qatar was pretty rough, but maybe he can put something together this time. He even has like a decent. He gets into Q3, which he hasn't really been doing much lately. So I'm like, okay, like now we're in the points to start. We're there. Yeah, we are not there. So some decisions for Red Bull to make, but if that ends up being the way Sergio Perez's career ends in Formula One, that would be pretty disappointing, because he has not been a bad driver through his career. He's had some really successful moments. He was always seen as this very promising driver that just couldn't get into the right car. He had some high highs with Red Bull as well, but unfortunately some pretty low lows here at the end of this 2024 season.
Yeah, it sounded like, especially at the end of the race, he was, commenting on some of his struggles throughout the year. He said, like, with my driving style, it was like easy to make so many mistakes with the car. I hate to hear stuff like that, because it's like, all right, bro, change your driving style then. Ever think about that? Like, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy or whatever, but
no, I mean, I think it's obviously more nuanced than that. It's just kind of shocking to imagine someone racing for as long as he has, through as many series, through multiple different teams, rule changes, iterations of cars and everything, to just be like, yep, this one was just the one that I just couldn't do it, man. That darn car, I just couldn't figure it out. And I think that is like concerning as someone who would like to stay in Formula One. Like, who's to say that that is going to get any better next year? There's really like this a lot of this change to these downforce prioritized cars and everything, where they're using the floors and downforce for the primary aero and everything. Like, that's kind of when things started to go poorly for Checo. So that being said, to be like, yeah, like I just couldn't wrap my arms around this one. Like, who's to say that he would in another team either, if his driving style isn't adaptable to it. So yeah, just a bummer if that is how he goes out, because as we've said many times, you're only as good as your last race in Formula One, and it would not be great if Checo's remembered for that more than the many good years of successful racing that he's had.
Yeah, especially because you would have to look back quite a while to find his last good race. So yeah, that recency bias would get like heavier and heavier as well. Yeah, and just like a final note, I know it's not. Well, all right, no, I believe it is. So a point to my mind that has always made a strong competitor somebody worth watching, somebody that's like able to be a force to be reckoned with over multiple years. What I understand to be a quality of a player or an athlete like that is somebody who is, or an individual or a team who is like adaptable across many different like metas, formats, or rule sets, right? You can't just be like a one-trick pony in many senses of the phrase, right? And it sounds like that might be what we're dealing with here with the Sergio Perez. Maybe he is just a bit of a one-trick pony, but with these rule sets for Formula One changing year to year, they're getting like new design directives, new ways of drawing performance out of a car, switching from, this downforce effect to this downforce effect. It shows a true maybe lack of like one element of what you need to be a well-rounded competitor is like that adaptability across many rule sets. That's a really good shout, seeing the like once the ground effect came in, like that's when we start to see the chinks in the armor for like Sergio's style, right? So that's really interesting and tough when you're on a grid with the Leclercs, the Hamiltons, the Alonsos, the Norrises, right? Who are weekend in and weekend out putting in good performances and helping their teams develop the car. Yeah. You can't
you can't help develop the car if you can't wrap your mind around how to drive it.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think that's the type of driver that teams want / need in like the 2024 like meta / rule set. It seems like you need like really fluid, adaptable, variable drivers that can, give you raw performance, like no matter what's being thrown at them. So that small phrase from Sergio like really gave me some like concerning vibes, because like the players that I look up to most have had to change their style, like straight up. They have to change the way you approach the game, just fully, to get wins again. You're going to get figured out. The rules are going to change, right? So a bit concerning for Sergio, and it's tough to see over the course of a year, over the course of 2 years, to see that type of talent just kind of calcify in some ways.
Yeah, and I think especially like just knowing that decisions are going to be made in the near future and his last two opportunities to show his stuff for the team before these younger drivers are getting opportunities in these postseason testing sessions to help the Red Bull management decide who's going to be driving next year. Two DNFs is not the way to show off your driving style, and especially two DNFs that seem to be primarily coming back to you and just on you for unforced errors. So yeah, well, don't have to. I digress, but yeah, definitely a difficult way for that to end. For this year and potentially for Checo's career. So we'll have to wait and see what is announced, but I'm sure we'll have news from the Red Bull camp in the very near future.
Yeah, so just a couple of losers on the weekend, Checo included, just talking about like some of the DNFs that happened, and just kind of using that to say, yeah, tough way for some seasons to end. Checo's specifically, because his head's on the chopping block easily, and that guillotine is not far. So yeah, that's got to be a tough position to be in. But yeah, so that kind of wraps up our like winners and losers conversation here on the weekend. Just want to maybe hit some points from the teams. Just kind of maybe keep it focused on like the race weekend, because like we said, we may have a kind of end of year summary coming up. So any teams like you want to hit on that we didn't get a good opportunity to talk about?
Let me see. I mean, with Nico Hulkenberg, just to credit him again, a really solid drive. He was in the position to potentially be. It was whoever finished first in the points between him and Gasly to take that P10 in the driver's standings. I was extremely impressed with the Haas team throughout the year, and I think that really highlighted Hulkenberg's skill set coming back into Formula One, now going over to the Kick Sauber team and continuing his Formula One future there. I think a lot of people, myself included, had high hopes with him coming back. We had thought pretty highly of him when he exited Formula One. But to come back, and Haas, of course, has improved their car so much over the past season, but to really be so consistently, especially later in the season, in the points, in Q3s, great qualifying performances, doing the best he could with a car that was not in that top four cars. Just a really, really solid drive from him. And then the other person that I wanted to touch on a little bit was Yuki Tsunoda. Out-qualified Liam Lawson 6-0 in this last stretch of the season. He finishes, of course, ahead of Liam Lawson, with Lawson DNFing at the end of the race here. But Yuki, I think, has, in my opinion, shown enough to deserve that opportunity in the Red Bull seat if they're going to make a change from Checo. He was out qualifying Lawson. He's obviously still young and has room to grow, but Red Bull has not been shy about putting young drivers who have room to grow into that seat next to Max since Daniel left the team originally, with Gasly and Albon both being thrust into that very difficult position. So I for myself, and especially looking at the end of the season with how Yuki performed in that head-to-head comparison, I just think that Yuki had a very, very solid season. Not perfect, but good enough to hopefully get an opportunity with that drive.
Yeah, especially if you are looking at who some of their other choices are. Yeah, I think Yuki is the best one. Sergio has has a quite unique driving style, and anybody else just isn't showing up on as regular of a basis as Max is, to show like that they would be like worth that. It seems like Yuki is getting the most out of what his car is capable of, weekend in, weekend out. His I would say the fire in the belly has been honed a little bit better. He's not having as many like unforced errors on the weekend. We haven't seen him in a spin recently. So yeah, I think Yuki has really improved his drive, and of the choices that we have, he seems to be a good, if not the best fit for that second seat next to Max. If I were a betting man, if I were a reckless man, I would put my money on a contract buyout for Perez. I think they're sending him to the bottom of the ocean and bringing Yuki up. That's like what I would put money on happening. So yeah, I think Yuki definitely is the best choice. Great shout on the 6-0 against Liam Lawson. Yeah, Yuki's been pretty solid as he's grown into his Formula One seat, and I bet he just keeps getting better.
Yeah, and we've been Yuki fans since he was coming in. We've been rooting for him. He's a fun driver to watch. He has a lot of personality that he brings and a lot of fire to the team, good and bad. But he did get the opportunity to be in the Red Bull car for this postseason testing. Max and Checo both are not driving the Red Bull cars in that. So Isaac Hadjar and Yuki Tsunoda in the postseason test in the Red Bull, and Liam Lawson and Ayumu Iwasa in the V-Carb for the postseason testing. So I think that kind of it gives a little nod to both. One, hey, Yuki, like, let's see what you can do in this car. You have some solid experience. Let's see if you can just jump in and be solid, and then giving Liam the opportunity to put some times in with the car that he's only had a short stint in this season. So not forcing him into a pretty uncomfortable jump after not even fully probably getting used to his current car. So yeah, both of those guys who have been talked about getting that opportunity here in the postseason test.
Yeah, another driver I want to talk about just a little bit, Alex Albon. I think we saw another really solid performance from him, starting towards the back of the pack today, moving himself up to just right outside the points. So I think Albon is just like a dark horse in general. I want to see this guy do well. He often does well. He just is like a very consistent, very intelligent driver, I feel like. And on this occasion, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, I think Albon ran a solid race. So yeah, just another driver that I look forward to seeing in 2025 again. And yeah, just someone we hadn't really talked about, but he had a really good race.
Yeah, just outside of the points, and to kind of bounce back and have like he could have finished P14, P15, and just kind of phoned it in at the end here. I mean, it had to be pretty dejecting to have the kind of run that he had through the later half of or later portion of the season. In the last 7 races, 3 DNFs and 1 did not start. So not even finishing half of that last 7 races, and still to put it up in just about the points, very close. Unfortunately, Max didn't do good enough of a job with Oscar, and he came back to snag that last spot. But yeah, really good drive from Albon to close out the season. And like I said at towards the start of the episode, I think a really solid and exciting lineup for Williams with him and Sainz there. That's a great opportunity for them to continue to build and try and work their way up in that constructors fight.
Yeah, that's a really exciting point when you said that, talking about Sainz and Albon. It made me think of like the grid, and honestly, there's no like skippable drivers. I feel like there's like a decent argument to be made for most of them to be on the grid, or at least like an interesting angle for like why you would want to like watch or follow this driver. Yeah, there's obviously one. There's one skippable. But if we just put him like right at the end of the album, honestly, it's like yeah, it's just 19 tracks. That's all. That's how we can think of it.
All right.
So yeah, very very few skippables in that regard. But yeah, just in general, just kind of closing up, I am excited for the 2025 grid. Just like thinking of some of these. And I guess we're thinking of it because combined with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix is like the send off and talking about like who won't be here, who will be here. So in some ways, this is like half of a year end summary. But yeah, just kind of thinking about who will be here next year and what the kind of seats will look like, what the grid will look like. Because yeah, you can't really talk about Yuki without thinking ahead. Does he have the seat? All of these things. These bits of context like are part of the conversation, right? So yeah, just some things to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely, and a truly exciting season to finish here in Abu Dhabi. 24 races, phenomenal constructors and drivers championship fights throughout different portions of the season. Pretty unexpected way for things to shake out, but a nice way to wrap it up. Lando Norris capping off the McLaren Constructors Championship with a win here in Abu Dhabi, with the two Ferrari drivers in second and third. Carlos up there on the podium with two of his former teammates to wrap out his stint in Ferrari. But yeah, first, second, and third place, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, and Charles Leclerc. And then in the drivers' standings, our top three ended up being Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, and then Charles Leclerc in P3. Just 18 points back from Lando, so pretty tight there at the end. Then to just solidify the constructors' standings with a very solid 666 points. McLaren took the Constructors' Championship with Ferrari and Red Bull behind in second and third place. I didn't notice that till I was just looking at it. I was
Dude,
like, oh.
You know there is somebody out there right now making a YouTube video about like
the end is near.
Yeah, the first Formula One team, dude.
Oh, yeah. So, God damn it, Oscar. Should have just given up that point. But yeah, just super exciting season to wrap up here at Abu Dhabi.
One final note about the podium and the cool down room. So all the drivers like come in, they like sit down. Zach Brown's there, a couple of the other like big wigs, right? One of the conversations that like you're able to hear is Carlos Sainz asking like what needed to happen for the P2. Carlos Sainz was like, "Oh, like how close were we? Could we have done it?" He asked something like this. Zach Brown answers so fast. Like, he knew every permutation. He knew every angle. Like, he was so fast to be like, oh, yeah, if you guys were like, blah, 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 like, you guys would have won.
Well, and all it was is if Carlos had won the race,
right,
then that would have been the end of it. That would have been the swing that they needed to win the championship, with Oscar being down that far.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely he was thinking it through.
It was right here on this guy's brain, like, for sure. That little moment had me laughing. But yeah, just a solid race, solid end of the season. But yeah, with that, I think that kind of brings us to our cool down lap. Maybe we could say some donuts on the grid here for the last race episode here. But Aaron, what's your flavor of the week?
So my food this week is donuts. No, my food this week. Colleen and I had a date night at a restaurant nearby that we hadn't been to. I hadn't been to before. She had been to. She got some nice prime rib that I had a couple bites of. It was really good. But I had an interesting crab cake sandwich. It wasn't bad. It was just not quite what I expected. But it was I'm trying to think how they called it a deviled crab cake sandwich. So I guess instead of the chunks of crab, it was more of like a mixed up patty where it's
like
whipped. Yeah, and so like I haven't had a crab cake sandwich like that before. Still tasted good and all, but it was on a Kaiser roll instead of it was a massive Kaiser roll, like bread hanging off all of the edges of the crab cake, so just way more bread than it needed. So I had a couple of tips. I went back into the kitchen and said, "Chef." No, I didn't. But afterwards, I was like, okay, like I enjoyed the restaurant. I would definitely go back. Probably would try something different, but it was still not a bad crab cake sandwich and meal, but just not quite what I expected.
But interesting.
Interesting, yeah. Like I didn't know that they made crab cake sandwiches whipped up like that.
Gotcha.
So now I know for the future. If they say deviled, that's what it means. Because I saw it on the menu and I was like the eggs? I'm like, that's weird. I'm ordering it anyway. So any fault lies fully on me. But my music for this week, Spotify Wrapped dropped. Kendrick, Mac Miller, of course, in my top 5 artists that I've listened to across the year. And so just to kind of like stay on that with Kendrick, I've been listening to some of those songs that were in my Spotify Wrapped top played songs and whatnot, but also GNX has still been bumping for the past week. I'm really enjoying that album and keep coming across more little bits and pieces that I didn't see initially or didn't notice first listens through. And I just really enjoy that about Kendrick with his writing style and figuring out kind of which songs I'm like really enjoying, but the whole album is solid. There's just a couple of standout songs that I love to bump in the car. But my to wrap out my flavor of the week, for my visual medium, Colleen and I have just been doing different routes on our walks with Center around the neighborhood to check out all the different Christmas lights that are set up. We've enjoyed and do enjoy just like checking out the different setups that some people do. Some people are pretty wild. Between Halloween and Christmas, I just purely do not know where these people are storing these decorations. There are some people with just massive setups for Halloween, the giant skeletons, the small skeletons, the demons, the ghosts, and then they just double down and have even more things out in their yard for Christmas. It's pretty impressive, but it's fun to just walk by and see all the different little decorations that everyone's done around the neighborhood. So that's my visual medium for this week.
What tends to be your style? What do you enjoy the most?
I like some like kind of subtle. I like something that looks like pretty classic. Some of the blow up things and whatnot they're enjoyable. It's fun to come across that every now and then. But like what is the most aesthetically like pleasing to me is some solid like old school bulbs with that give that kind of frosted like light from them a little bit. Some some good wreaths hanging on the house, nice uplighting to kind of highlight those nice little more simple kind of features. Love some good garland, but the one thing that like no matter what always like to my mind comes as like that's a good setup or bad setup is, are the lights like across the front of the house, are they straight, like, or are these little like differences in the level? If you have it clean, like straight across, it looks like just a straight line. That just really tickles that aesthetic part of my brain to be like, ooh, that looks clean.
Okay.
So yeah.
Neat. Okay, I can appreciate that. Yeah, there's been some memorable holiday, setups. There are some good ones around. So yeah, it's nice that you're taking the opportunity to kind of go hunt for them and find them where you can. That's really funny. But yeah, you just have to imagine the amount of Tupperware that these people must have in their basements year round, where it's like, you don't even get to Peloton down there. It's just all skeletons and reeds.
There can't be any room in these people's basements for anything else. It's just decorations and that's it. Yeah, it's pretty impressive in just a sheer volume, like quality for some of these folks out here.
But that curb appeal be popping. You are the talk of the town for like 5 weeks. That's like not bad. More power to you.
If you double it down with the Halloween, you get a nice fall to winter little collab there. So
okay, there you go. Yeah, like king of the cold months.
Yeah, they're just running it once the days get shorter, they come out strong. But Justin, why don't you hit us with your flavor of the week for this week here?
All right, so my food is a little bit like a thorn. It's a little bit like a seed, but it's I've been thinking, and one way that I feel very useful is when I'm able to like help like prep a meal or like help cook a meal. I don't have like creativity. My creativity is like it's like organization based and it's like fact based, right? My creativity is in like words and ideas. yeah, it's like stuff like that, right? But like when it comes to like planning a meal, I'm just like, I don't know what goes together, right? Like I don't know what cumin is. Like I know that it's a thing, but I don't know like what the taste of cumin is. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel you.
So one thing that I think would be nice for me to get better at is just like a couple of pocket meals that I know how to like shop for, prep for, and then make.
Okay.
There are a good amount of days, like Sarah has like many more clients than I do. So there are days where like I'll have one and she'll have 3, right? And like on that day, it'd be really helpful like if I could take care of the meal then too. A lot of times I find myself like I'm just able to like to chop a few things. I can like do this or like prep this, but overall like I'm no full meal guy. So I think
so this is what I would recommend for that. Like figure out a couple of things that you like maybe enjoy from a restaurant or something. That's kind of how I started like learning to cook more and like get more diverse with my cooking. I was like, I liked this that I got from this Thai takeout place or this Mexican restaurant or whatever, and go, let me look up a recipe online and then just like use that recipe as your shopping list, use that as like your as your playbook, and then once you have that like generic kind of recipe down, then you can start tweaking it a little bit as you make it. But that's what I would recommend, to just things that you and Sarah both like, that you can kind of like dial in on and be like, hey, I like to eat this, so let's figure this out.
Yeah, and even just like being able to take like one meal off of like her to-do list a week, like I think that would be very helpful. So that's something I've been thinking about how I could like do better at and like work into like my routine and schedule and like be able to help.
Yeah,
So that's what I've been thinking about as far as food goes, and that's a really good idea. Just think of like menu items that are good, and then just like try and make them at home.
absolutely.
Yeah, we've done that a couple of times and it works out really well. My music this week, very similar. Been going back to some GNX hits and then also just like mixing in some of my Kendrick favorites, like across a bunch of the albums. Going back to a couple of ones on Damn. Going back to some on Mr. Morale. I really like Rich Spirit on Mr. Morale.
Okay. Yeah.
No, let me tell you this about Damn. You know, originally when I first heard it, when I was looking at the credits and I'm Bono is on this song. Bono? like as you move away from the release, his on that album, that little beginning section of the song that he does, it's actually great and really enjoyable, and I think adds a lot to kind of the emotion of that song. So yeah, just an example of going back to some things. You can often hear something new in them, so that's really exciting.
Nice.
And then my visual medium here for the week. I hope you were watching these matches, son. I hit you with the reminder.
I did.
Shanghai
I checked out the G2 phase. So.
Nice. That's very exciting. Nice 2-0 for G2 over FaZe, locking themselves into the playoff stage. But yeah, the Shanghai elimination stage was super exciting. And I'll just zoom in just real quick, just give you one little tidbit. My underdog team. So, I obviously have my favorites in the top five. I like whatever. I like watching the best, but often you want to have a guilty pleasure, like a Yuki Tsunoda. He's not going to win, but you want to see him do well, right?
Okay.
And this team is the new 2024 heroic lineup with Kixon, Tesses, Shush, Nertz, and Degster. So their 2024 run has been tumultuous, to say the least. They show up huge in matches that matter because of their in-game leader, their tactician, Kixan. He's new and growing into the role. But I think he's one of the best young tacticians that we currently have in Tier 1 CS. I think he's number one to watch. They make their run all the way through the elimination stage. They get matched up against Na'Vi. Previous major winners this year have made 6 grand finals over the course of the year and won, I think, 3 of them. This Na'Vi lineup has been lights out, son.
Yeah.
My boy, Kixon and friends, step up. They knock them out 2-1, lock themselves in for playoffs, and knock out the favorites for the tournament going in was Na'Vi. My boy, Kixon and friends, kicks them out. The best thing about this guy is he's a fragging in-game leader. So, when it matters, he can get kills too. He's very comfortable on a rifle, which is exciting. He has this sick 1v2 clutch on the bomb site, and he has a pop off. He kind of leans back in his chair and he hits him with the sit down and then proceeds to just wipe him. Dude, this series was so exciting, and I think in my mind sets up a really fun and exciting playoffs where all of the favorites aren't there now. There's a couple of underdog stories coming in. Unfortunately, Heroic gets matched against G2. I don't think they win that. I think their run ends at Nico and Monacy, who now, in my mind, are the tournament favorites, them and Vitality likely.
I think so.
But, dude, that match was so sick. It was so fun because you just think the whole time okay, underdog game, Navi's gonna take this in however many rounds it'll take, but man, they locked it up, and it was so exciting to watch your underdog team pull out a huge victory like that. It was very exciting. So yeah, my visual medium, Shanghai Major, it's exciting.
Awesome. No, that I will have to watch a little bit more. I definitely will find some more time without Formula One in my life to go back and rewatch some of that. But yeah, that brings us to the close of the episode, wrapping up the cool down lap there. We're taking it into the pits for the last race recap of the season here with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But as always, we appreciate everyone for spending time with us, listening to us jabber on about Formula One and these fun things going on around our interests and everything. So thank you for listening with us.
Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for listening. We truly hope to see you in 2025. Like we said, the Tyred Boys podcast will live on. So just thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your time, and peace out, everyone.
Yep. See ya. We'll keep an eye out for a season-ending recap. But bye, guys.
Oh, baby.